Tonight we're in Gateshead. Welcome to Question Time. On the panel tonight, the Conservative Defence Secretary, Tustin Rushen, the Labour Deputy Leader, Elliot C99, Leader of the National Unionist Party, MCR 3257, the Liberal Democrat MP, Guerrilla Empire 0, the Green Deputy Principal Speaker, Zukov 236, and the Deputy Leader of the Classical Liberals, Twisted Nuke. As we move into our first question of the evening, as Britain approaches Brexit, how will your parties go to reflect Britain's changing role on the global stage? That question is firstly addressed to Tustin Rushen from the Conservative Party.
Well, the Conservative Party is the only party to actually come up with a strong, and reasonable plan for Brexit. Now, first off, we passed the Great Repeal Bill and we're making steps towards Brexit negotiations. We won the single market reform, we passed the Great Repeal Bill, and we've triggered Article 50. So now, the Conservatives are going to be moving towards a plan that is reasonable in nature, that secures our future, secures our laws, and secures trade deals, and then make sure we get prosperity in Britain, trade with Europe and around the world.
And now to Guerrilla Empire 0 from the Liberal Democrat.
The Liberal Democrats, we are very pro-European Union, and we believe as a party that this whole Brexit fiasco has been one giant blunder after blunder in the world, in the eyes of the world. And I believe that when it's all said and done and we've come to some sort of an agreement, I believe that we should be holding another referendum to make sure that the British people actually want to be doing this. We've also seen very hard xenophobic and isolationist views of the Leave camp, and it's very unsettling to see in the modern day. And the Liberal Democrats seem to be one of the only parties to support a very pro-EU standpoint.
And now I'll address the classical Liberal candidate, Twisted Nuke.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. As Britain approaches Brexit, how will your parties look to reflect Britain's changing role on the global stage?
Well, for a start, we're going to get Brexit right. And that means we're going to do it through key pledges. We are going to ensure there will be no tariffs between us and the European Union. We're to ensure our young people retain all of the opportunities they currently have as a result of EU membership. We are going to retain control of our trade policy, no customs union. And, to cap it off, we are not going to have a fourth referendum. So Liberal Democrat voters who are sick of being asked, vote again and again and again until you give the right answer, we are not going to have another referendum. So, that is how we do step one. We are going to leave the European Union. We are going to re-engage with the world. We are going to become a free trading and prosperous nation. There is a great future for our country, but only if we do it right. And only the classical liberals have the plan that is going to do that right. We cannot be putting arbitrary migration targets above our prosperity as a country. We cannot be trying to undo leaving the European Union and staying inside. We need to re-engage with the world. We need to do it now, and only the classical liberals have the plan that will make this work.
And now to the National Unionist Leader, MCR 3257.
Well, the referendum in 2016, the question that was asked was not, do you want to leave part of the European Union? It was, do you want to leave the European Union? And that was reaffirmed in the most recent referendum when people voted against the single market. So we're not going to say, okay, well, we'll just stay in some of it, such as the customs union. We want to get out. We want to reaffirm our own sovereignty. We want to bring back control from the EU to the British Parliament and the British people. And that will embolden our position on the world stage, because as a free trading sovereign nation, we will have a greater say on the World Trade Organization and various other international organizations than just being represented by one person from the EU representing 28 nations. And so we have a real opportunity now to leave the EU and become our own, start signing our own trade deals, and also working with other countries on various other things like plants and animal welfare and climate change, and all these different things where we've been unrepresented due to having the EU represent the UK and 27 other countries, where we can now start having our own say.
And on to the Labour Party leader, Elliot C99.
Well, Brexit is the issue of the generation, and we've had 2 referendums, and Labour will respect both referendums. We will be leaving the EU, we'll be leaving the single market, that is clear. Now, for other parties, they'll give you little sound bites, but Labour are going to give you some actual policy of what a Labour Brexit policy would look like. This would be a Ukraine plus deal. What does this mean? Well, this means negotiating a bespoke trade deal with the EU. So we retain access to 500 million potential customers because we can't afford to fall back on WTO rules and risk being priced out by single market tariffs. The deal will also include provisions to allow the UK service providers as well as good producers to access the market. This means stuff like financial passporting will be involved, which is incredibly important to the service industry, including and easing the transition to UK outside of the EU. Will be backing a period inside the single market to reduce the potential economic harmful effects we get from it. But we are leaving the European Union. We are not leaving Europe. So we'll be retaining access to some programs like Euratom, the Internal Energy Market, the Erasmus program, and we'll be retaining the Human Rights Act as part of the European Convention on Human Rights. But most of all, and the most important part of the Labour Brexit policy is that Parliament will have a final vote on any terms of the deal. That means that we will have a decision, with voters, to have a decision to accept or reject the final Brexit deal in order to have a parliamentary mandate behind it. Thank you.
And finally, before I address it to the rest of the panel, Zukov 236 from the Green Party.
All right. The Green Party is supportive of both referendums. People have clearly made their choice. Now, our plan would be a left-wing Brexit. We would support using the Preston model and using a regional investment bank to lessen economic damage, and we would also negotiate with the EU to try to keep whatever beneficial trade a beneficial trade deal that could work for all Britons, not just the ones at the top.
And so on that, I'll throw it to the rest of the panel to see if there's anything they'd like to say in response to any of the answers given.
Okay. I'm not going to let you get away with this, Elliot. I mean, as usual, Labour is trying to tell a complete pack of lies about how leaving the European Union is going to work. So, they want a Ukraine deal. Finally, somebody can actually tell us what they want. So, apparently, we're going to get a Ukraine deal that covers services and gives us financial passporting. Now, that's very interesting because Ukraine doesn't have that deal. And Ukraine is effectively just one step below single market. So, ECJ influence is present in Ukraine. Ukraine has to abide by EU technical standards and EU laws. In fact, it sounds suspiciously like Labour is trying to find the closest model to the single market they possibly can to look like they're honouring the referendum while sneaking back in through the back door. What do you have to say about that?
Well, firstly, that's a ridiculous suggestion. We're leaving the single market. We've had the referendum. We've accepted the results of the referendum.
And so you're going to create a new single market deal to replace it?
No,
and then what you're going to do is you're going to pull the wool over the eyes of the electorate and say, oh, look at us, how democratic we are. Just be honest. My party is saying we shouldn't have had the referendum. That's what you think. Stop lying to people. You think that people voted wrong. You think the referendum shouldn't have been held. Tell the truth.
It's okay. I don't need the classical liberals to tell me the truth. It's simple as, really, we're leaving the single market. I don't need the classical liberals to tell me what to do because the Labour Party have consulted with many people across the country. Okay? We don't need this kind of idea that we're pro-remaining in the single market. We're definitely leaving. We're seeking a Ukraine plus deal, and we're not going to just get rid of access to the single market because our global supply chains rely on this, and we shouldn't abandon it just in kind of vain ideological purity.
No one's proposing we lose access.
Okay, I've got. Can I just make a couple of quick statements here? First off, I'd like to point out to Elliot It's not actually you don't get to go to like a restaurant and pick and this bit of that. It's not a buffet when it comes to deals. You get what you're given, mate. You can't just say, we'll have a Ukraine deal, we'll have services. That's not how it works. And Labour, obviously, once again, doesn't understand the complexity of problems. They think we can just get a solution off the books, and that'll work. That's not going to work. What's going to work is the Conservative plan. Furthermore, I'd like to point out to the Lib Dem candidate, Snapcrackle, about that they want us to have another referendum. How excellent is that? We're gonna have a third referendum because we've thought the wrong way, and we're gonna have a fourth referendum because we thought the wrong way every time. So what that means, and therefore, we've thought the wrong way every time, so we have to have another referendum. Also, he said there was racism in the Leave camp. Is his idea of racism the fact that we don't want to have massive unchecked immigration and the migration problems that Germany has? We don't want to have an overflow of people who aren't going to be good for the country, or is that because
what I'm essentially saying is that we need to be absolutely sure of making a decision of this magnitude. We
were so sure. With 54% of people, the entire south of England voted to leave. 54% of people. How sure do you need to be?
A massive power vacuum in the European Union.
If we have another referendum and say, even though it won't happen, and say remain on 48%, which is a lower margin than all of the other referendums they had. Would we need another one to be sure? Because that seems like we need.
Well,
another
the referendum that
we get one?
we would be proposing is just
no. That's a yes or no question, Snapcrackle. It's a yes or no question. Would we get one? No. So there we go. Ladies and gentlemen. We know that we've been told.
We would not be getting a fifth referendum. We would only be getting.
We'll keep having referendums until we get the right answer.
Absolutely, 100% positive.
We'll keep having, exactly. Twisted Nuke for once has actually got the right idea. But I'll tell you what he doesn't have the right idea on. Like Labour, they've got a little buffet which they've picked and chosen for their
I've got to stop you there.
What happens if...
I've got to stop you. Sorry. Can I just intervene for a second? It's not a buffet. And if the Conservatives believe that the Brexit negotiations are like a buffet, then they are so far from the truth. I'm going to quote something from the I'm going to quote something from your manifesto.
It's exactly not a buffet. It's the opposite to a buffet. That's not how it works. You go through the complex negotiations, a complex series of negotiations to get a deal that works for everybody. You don't just pick and choose what other people have.
In the words of the Conservative manifesto, we are negotiating a bespoke trade agreement with the European Union as equals. So surely we have the same power. Do you not agree with the Conservative manifesto that we're negotiating as equals?
A bespoke trade deal isn't a Ukraine deal plus services. Something that we've just, a bespoke trade deal is different to
Go on, tell me what the Conservative bespoke trade agreement is, because we've told you what ours is.
We've told you what it is. The bespoke trade. It's a trade deal we're going to have with the European Union. We're going to ensure that there are no tariffs. We're going to ensure that
what the Conservatives are doing is
what are we doing?
Is the complete opposite of what Labour have chosen to do, which is to reveal their entire negotiating hand in a manifesto and a public debate, which will certainly be watched by the EU. And then, as soon as they go to the EU with their plan, the EU will know exactly what they're going to ask for, and they'll know exactly how to stop them from cherry picking what they want. What you need to do in a negotiation is to go into
it. The hard Brexit that the Conservatives and the National Unionists are proposing would be disastrous.
That the people, that the people of this country want. The people of this country, not the Conservatives, not the NUP, the people that voted for it. The voters, mate. The voters.
We have to actually move on because we're going to move on to the second topic discussion. So the second question of the evening is to do with the budget, and the end of last term saw the failure of the much maligned Conservative budget proposed by Prime Minister Lee Emerald. How do your parties intend to ensure that any budget you propose is passed through the House of Commons? And I'm going to present it first to the NUP leader MCR 3257.
Well, the failure of the budget was sad, but not a disaster, because we'd already passed a budget in the previous term, which had started turning back the economy onto the right path. So if we're elected, we'll of course do as much as we can to pass a budget, and that's pretty much down to the people when they come to vote in an election, is whether we're going to give us the number of the MPs. We could control our MPs, unlike the Conservatives, and so if you are to elect the NUP, then that's what you're going to get. And the scary thing is, if the result of this election is a government supported by the classical Liberals, we saw the budget that the classical Liberals proposed and that the Tories were willing to completely sign off. They gave that to us.
You're supposed to be Conservative.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to object on that. I'm sorry, we're going to have to object on that. We did not sign off it, and we specifically didn't sign off on it. It didn't.
Yes, you did.
We did not
Yes,
sign.
you did.
Did you notice how the budget that went to the House wasn't the budget that was proposed? The budget that went to the House that the Conservatives put forward, the Conservative-led government by the Conservative Chancellor, was not the budget that we discussed with the classical Liberals.
Matt put that budget to me and said, will you sign off on that? Is that okay? This is going to be the budget. Had I not said, no, that's ridiculous, we're not doing that. The poor haven't been having too good a deal for too long. We're not willing to, cut taxes for the rich and increase taxes on the poor. We're not willing to massively cut public services. Then that is the budget that would have gone ahead. So that's why electing NUP MPs is so crucial in this election. And it's not all about, it's not all about passing a budget. It's about passing the right budget and proposing the right budget, and that's what we ensured this term.
Next, I'm going to present the question to the Green Deputy Principal Speaker, Zukov 236.
All right. So this budget failed in the House, and it deserved to be. It was a horrific budget that raised taxes on ordinary Britons, and it cut crucial spending. CLG went from $51 billion to $32.84 billion. Work and welfare was cut by 1/3. Health went down from $59 billion. And
no, I'm going to have to interrupt here. I am going to have to interrupt on this one. That's I'm fully going to have to do that. I believe you are actually. He's telling a falsehood. He's saying a falsehood that is that we all know.
I'm sorry about that. Please do continue. Sorry about that.
And what's the amazing thing? Taxes were actually raised. This is austerity en masse. So it was so bad that I think a couple Conservative MPs themselves went to their constituents, heard from them, and said, no, we can't vote for something like this. So I think it rightly deserved to be shut down, and the Green Party will not put forward a budget that has roots in austerity.
What you said was a complete lie.
It was a lie. Yeah. Can I? Okay. I've held my tongue here because that was a falsehood. You have to. I'm not protected by parliamentary privilege. I can call you out on that. That was a falsehood, and you know it. We all know the reasons that was a falsehood. And we know that comparisons between this budget and the previous budgets are extremely difficult due to circumstances outside our direct parliamentary control. So let's begin by pointing that out, because once again, surprise, surprise, the Greens are lying to you. But the Greens are lying. They're telling falsehoods deliberately to try and scare you out of voting for the Conservatives. That's ridiculous. All right, I'm gonna. Do I have permission? Do I have the floor, so to speak, Trev?
Yeah, you were next up anyway, so just please do continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the budget is a serious issue, but it's not an issue it's an issue that I refuse. I'm going to refuse any claim that it was because of disunity in the government. What caused the failure of that budget was people looking out for their own interests, their career interests. People who are careerists, people who are looking out for their personal interest over the national interest. The Conservatives were looking for the interests of working people, but we were stopped by people who were trying to grab power and make themselves look like they were better than they actually were. Sorry?
The Conservatives looking out for the working people, please come off it.
Absolutely, we are. Absolutely we are. We've raised the living wage. We've also we're going back to universal credit, which we know is a system that works. We're going back. The Conservatives also are stopping Tolra, meaning you, as a working person, can start a business and actually have some success. We've also protecting free speech in universities and other institutions, making so that the working people who are trying to actually go about their lives are protected. Can say what they need to say. But unfortunately, as we've seen by the fact that the opposition only raised a third of the legislation that the Conservatives and the National Unionist Party did, unfortunately, they're not looking out for workers at all.
I'm going to address the question to the Labour Deputy Leader now, Elliot C99.
Well, you just heard the Conservative leader shout liar and falsehood. It's not the kind politics we would want in this country. Now I'm going to bring it back to some reasoned debate. I'll tell you why the budget.
But it was a falsehood. It was
Thank
a
you
falsehood.
again.
Please
What am I supposed to say
could
if
you
it was
not
not a
interrupt
falsehood?
while he's speaking? Thank you.
It is great to have them just shouting at you across the room. Well, I'll tell you what the budget was. The reason people voted against the budget is because it was a bad budget. Universal credit doesn't work. Cuts to state pension were horrific. Cuts to the NHS were awful. And do you know why people voted against it? People who are Tory MPs, people with NUP MPs, it's because they voted in the national interest. They chose that this budget would not be good for the country. They didn't put party interests above national interests. I know from getting many of these rebels to rebel that many people actually did want to rebel, but they couldn't because of party powers above, and it's kind of that dictatorial nature of the Conservative Party that stopped that.
Do you mean the whip system? I'm sorry, I'll stop interrupting.
Yeah, you could learn to listen, because if you actually listen to voters, maybe you'd pass a budget, and maybe you'd get a budget that would actually help working people. What Labour are going to do are go bring in a budget that helps working people. It's going to be through a £500 billion national investment bank supported by 12 regional development banks. We're also regional investment banks. We're also going to have the universal basic assistance plus system replace the awful universal credit system. We're going to boost the NHS by 20 billion. I could go on, but it's quite clear that if you want a government that works for you, you need to vote for a Labour government.
And next I'm going to go to the Liberal Democrat, Guerrilla Empire Zero.
Thank you. The budget which thank God failed, was an absolute travesty to see even be considered to be put onto the floor. Now, I realize that a lot of hard-working, good intentions were put into this bill by the Conservative and the Conservative Party and the National Unionists, but the amount of slashes to the National Health Service, devolved spending on Northern Ireland, that was simply unacceptable. Now, with Liberal Democrats, we are going to maintain commitment to NIT, and we're going to start to abolish domestic VAT taxation. Now, this will make products more affordable, life more affordable, and will bring in roughly £4,500 per household in the United Kingdom. Now, that seems like a deal you can't refuse. Albeit, for transparency's sake, we will have to raise the income tax just a bit. That is the unfortunate side effect. We're going to be introducing a drugs tax. We're going to be increased spending on our science funding, like Department of or Climate Change. And we're going to keep our spending in the NHS and continue to fund it more.
So now I'll send it back to the panel. If there's anything any of your fellow...
What about Twisted Nuke?
Oh, wait, no. Oh, apologies. Yeah, Twisted Nuke, apologies for that. Yeah, please do give your statement.
Would you please repeat the question?
Certainly. The end of last term saw the failure of the much maligned Conservative budget proposed by Leafy Emerald. How do your parties intend to ensure that any budget you propose is passed through the House of Commons?
Well, you can't ensure a budget is going to be passed through the House of Commons because the House of Commons is there to represent constituents. I don't get to decide how other MPs will vote. I only get to decide how I vote. So I reject the premise of the question. I mean, the best way you could do it is by presenting the best possible budget you can. And quite frankly, I was quite disappointed with the last budget. We got rid of NIT, which is quite possibly the greatest achievement in this century. We didn't cut income tax nearly as far as we could have. And I don't understand the reasoning behind it. I really don't. NIT is a great accomplishment. We are going to bring back NIT. That is the Classical Liberals' key pledge to you. We are going to set the boundary at 20,000 personal allowance with 50% subsidy rate. We are going to bring back NIT. We are going to be its guardians and its saviours. That will be one way we could help to unite the House, because as we've seen on this panel, the majority of parties are very much in favour of it because it's an excellent system and it doesn't have the problem of universal credit, which is people will always fall through the cracks. There are people living on the streets because of universal credit. We are going to fix that.
And on that note, I will send it back to the panel. If there's anything your fellow panellists have said that you want to bring up, please do so.
I'd like to just have a wee go at the Liberal Democrats, because you can't actually drop. So you can't remove the VAT because of your beloved European Union. So if we actually go for the Liberal Democrat and Labour...
We're talking about domestic VAT taxation.
No, you can't remove it. You can't drop it.
European Directive on VAT 126EC, I believe. There is a minimum set rate for VAT. You can't drop it below that because otherwise people will drop it to 0% and introduce a sales tax. We only adopted VAT when we joined the European Union as a part of the EU VAT Directive. So therefore we cannot stay within the European Union and implement your VAT reforms. Therefore you're lying. Or incompetent. Pick one.
I'm neither.
Okay, well it was... Okay. If I may, Trev, I'd like to... If I may, can I comment on the syntax? Because you'll feel free to come to the Conservatives any time, because I think you're actually stepping away from the Liberal part in your Liberal Democrats, aren't you?
Actually, no,
and
I'm actually looking...
And in fact, the Democrat part, because you're trying to divert the will of the people when it comes to Brexit. So you could call yourself, I suppose, the conservative autocrats, if you'd like. I'm happy to make some designs for you on some posters.
That is interesting offer, but I am looking at the Liberal Democratic Manifesto here, and it says to introduce a drug tax and to that same effect a sin tax.
So how are you going to do your VAT reforms? Come on.
How are you going to do it?
It's against EU law. Tell us. How are you going to introduce your VAT reforms when it's
Ladies and gentlemen, this is
European Union and you want
this
to stay
this
within
is
the EU?
this is exactly what's going to happen next term if you vote for the Clubs and the Tories. They're going to gang up.
We're going to question how somebody is once again is telling a falsehood.
You've made the point is you've made your point. You've made your point. Let's move on to policy. Have you heard policy from the Clubs and the Tories tonight? No, you haven't.
Happy to start talking
Let's
policy.
put through.
Would you like to hear our policy? I'll be happy to tell you. We're going to cut income tax down to 7.5, 12.5 and 17.5%. We are going to cut VAT every year. We are going to sort out our education policy. We're going to scratch catchment areas, which only keep poor kids out of good schools. We are going to relax immigration. We're going to have free movement to the US, to South Africa, to Singapore. We're going to bring back NIT, make it work for everyone. We are going to reform our justice system, adopting a Norway model.
I'm not suggesting... Well, I basically am, but it's unrealistic to think that we could abolish VAT in its entirety, but we can at least reduce it, because it is at a ludicrous rate of 20%.
Well, that's what the Lib Dems are proposing, to abolish VAT.
Because it is better to abolish it, to add a new sales tax, rather than to have...
But that's impossible. That's impossible under European Union directives.
Well, we won't...
So is your policy to break EU law? I mean, aren't they going to be rather upset by a Liberal Democrat government that says, we're going to come in, but we're going to break all your rules, but we'd like to stay in, please? Because we can't just revoke Article 50, we have to have their permission. Are they really going to say, well, hang on a moment, your own policy is you're going to break all of our laws, why would we let you back in?
Newt, can I just ask you a question quickly?
Sure.
If you're so critical of the Liberal Democrats, why have you endorsed them in a constituency? If you think
we'd like to keep the opposition,
the very candidate who announced that policy, why have you endorsed them?
Quite simple, because it's a first past the post system, and we want to have the lesser of two evils.
So you're okay with someone being elected to the House of Commons with this view?
I would rather have someone that's closer to our views, because it means...
So why didn't you stand yourself? Why didn't you stand yourself?
Well, I am standing myself. I'm standing with the constituency of Northumbria against another Tory carpetbagger.
South, I want to say What is it? West London potentially?
Because I live in Northumbria, I'm standing in my home
No, I'm
constituency.
talking
I have
about.
never stood outside
I'm
of Northumbria,
talking.
as you well
I'm
know.
talking about your party. Why is your party
Well, you just asked
endorse
why
the
am
Lib
I not
Dems?
standing there? I'm
Surely,
standing in Northumbria.
wouldn't it?
You're here representing the classical liberals, so why are you referring to the classical liberals as you is not unreasonable.
Fair enough. All right. Well, because we have a finite number of candidates, we are a small party. There's only so many people we can field. We have to fill in the blanks. I'd love to be able to stand someone in every constituency like the Tories do, but we just don't have the resources. So we have to accept the reality that in some cases it makes more sense to endorse someone who's the lesser of two evils, even if some of their policies are frankly stupid. Because we have a much better chance of getting through some sensible liberal policies.
Obviously, you want to get into government next term, and obviously to get that little agreement there, sure you need some negotiating skills. If you can't even bother to
I think
check
he
out
is
the
saying he
policies
knows what the policy is.
of the party,
I don't know what the policies are. I've just told
well,
them
how
why
come?
they're wrong.
Why did you endorse them? If you think this policy is so ridiculous, why did you endorse them? Surely you check out what you're endorsing before you endorse it. You're choosing not to answer the question.
No, I've answered the question twice. You're just not listening. Clear the fluff out of your ears.
How very nice.
Okay,
I'm going to ask
excuse me.
one more time because I don't think it's not quite getting in there. I'm just going to say this.
It is going to be on pretty quickly. I mean,
I'm happy to repeat the answer for you. I
we haven't
spend
got all
the rest
night
half
to
the
talk
hour
about the
answering the
budget as
question.
much as I'd like to. But
It's not an answer.
Can we just move on? So the third question of the evening is pertaining to healthcare. What plans do your parties have regarding expansion or reform to the National Health Service? And the first person I'm going to ask is the Shadow Chancellor and Labour leader, Elliot C99.
Well, Labour is the party of the NHS. In 1948, we established the NHS. We're committed to the principles of free at the point of use. And that is why we're extending that to the welfare state as well in Universal Basic Services Plus. Will any of these parties match our pledge on the NHS? That is £20 billion extra a year to solve the crisis. Will anyone match it? No, they won't because
we can't afford it.
Fantastic. There we go. Once again, interrupting. Let's hear about this reasoned debate. It's quite simple. Labour will be reforming the National Health Service. You've asked a question, and I'm going to answer your question, Elliot. He's asked a question. I'm going to answer the question. No. It's not a lolly scramble. You can't continually throw money at things. The NHS, in fact, they asked for £8 billion. We went to the people who, in fact, know the most about the health service. So we're giving them £8 billion.
The next bit, obviously, for that question, I asked about expansion or reform to the NHS. I'll be asking Twisted Newt next, and then obviously we'll be able to come back to the questions that you've asked.
Well, I was very worried that no one shared my view, but I'm very glad that Toast agrees that we can't just keep throwing more and more money at the NHS. We have a finite amount of money. The reason we've got our taxes up so high so far is because we keep spending more and more money on socialist expenditure. So, no, we're not going to keep funneling more and more money that comes from your taxes into the NHS. We are going to keep it where it is. What we are going to do is we're going to introduce more private provision into the NHS. We're going to do that by supporting the Private Tax Credits Act, which is a part subsidy towards private healthcare. This helps reduce the burden on the NHS. We are, of course, going to review the funding, but we're not going to just pick an arbitrary amount of numbers, say we'll have 20 billion, 50 billion, 100 billion, however much money, whatever. We'll just put up taxes. Why not? It's only some poor constituents' money. We don't really represent them, which is clearly what Labour's going to do. No. We're not going to get carried away. We're not going to throw money into a fire just for political convenience. Rubbish. What we are going to do is we're going to increase private provision. We are going to support excise taxes to continue to fund it. We are going to deal with the problems with rural healthcare. That is our policy. It's very simple.
And I'll be throwing it next to MCR 3257, the leader of the NUP.
I'm rather on the same page as the Conservatives and the Classical Liberals here. I don't think that you can just throw big sums of money at the NHS or make up a number that sounds quite big and sounds quite nice and that people might quite like. Because I know it's a very important issue to many people. But equally, if you start reforming the NHS, you've got to consider that the NHS has been having ongoing reform. And that might be a good reason for the state that it's in now. So I think the NHS doesn't need any more reform. You just need to protect its spending, increase its spending slowly and give it the amount that it actually asks for. And on the point of private involvement in the NHS, the current private involvement in the NHS isn't working. PFIs have been estimated to cost the NHS £2 billion a year. So what we're going to say is stop all PFIs and completely end all past PFIs because they don't work. But also another important issue we want to focus on this term, because we've been making so much progress already, is obesity, particularly childhood obesity. And we're looking at taxation on that and subsidising food and making sure that the NHS is fully equipped to deal with obesity, because that's one of the biggest problems of our time. And that's where our focus is on the NHS, not just needlessly reforming it or throwing money at it.
You gonna introduce electroshock there?
Sorry?
That's uncalled for.
Shut
That's
up.
that's
What was-
uncalled for and ridiculous.
Gorilla, if you're going to bring back slurs like that, get the hell out of it. Seriously.
Can we
If
not?
you're
Trev,
going
can you
to,
step in
I'm
on
sorry.
this, please?
I'm
really sorry.
I am a
but that's
bisexual man, and
ridiculous.
even I can see how pathetic that was. If that's all you can offer for politics, get out. Seriously, get out.
I'm not even going to make this a partisan
That's
issue.
disgusting.
I recognise that was just
It's
a ridiculous. It's an unacceptable
Pathetic.
statement.
Absolutely pathetic.
Anyway,
Well,
going to
I
move
don't
on
know
to
what
the
was said,
Green
but
Party
that's all
representative.
They made a comment
Yeah.
about electroshock
I'm going to move on to the
Let's
Green
put it
Party
like that.
representative, Zukov 236.
He's insinuating that that you believe in electroshock therapy. We'll not have that.
Well, I can clarify that we don't.
I'm going to move on to the Green Party representative, Zukov 236.
The Green Party is committed to the NHS. It's really a testament to the compassion, civility, common sense that ordinary Britons are proud of about their country. But there are problems within the NHS. We have to recognize that. There's inefficient hierarchies. There's workers don't have nearly enough power. And we need to break the rigid systems of training and give more fluidity. And we need to give patients more control over their health outcomes. The Green Party is also against the private interference within the private system's interference within the NHS, because it's costing the NHS and costing ordinary Britons a lot. And yeah, that's our policy.
So I'm going to take it now to the classical Liberal Deputy Leader, Twister Nuke.
Hang on, haven't I already answered the health one?
He's already spoken. I haven't.
Oh wait,
spoken.
never mind that.
I'm happy to go again if you'd
Never
like.
mind, a bit of a
No, he's not going again. Hell, he's not going again.
Apologies,
I'll go on toast.
Okay.
yeah, it's Toast and Russian next. Apologies for that.
Like I objected earlier, it's not a lolly scramble. I'd like to point that out to Elliot. You don't just take money. You can't just take money and throw it at things until problems are solved. Do you know what doctors? Do you know what until 2006 doctors spent most of their time on? It was information gathering. No amount of money you throw at that can fixes the problem. You know, you can't just keep taking taxpayers' money and throwing it at it. What the Conservatives are going to do is we're going to take the £8 billion figure that the NHS actually asked for, and we're going to give them that. We're going to give them what they asked for. And if they're going to complain, if the Labour Party are going to complain about the NHS being poor, let's remember that it takes 8 years to train doctors, and 8 years ago it was a Labour Party in power. Also, let's remember what the Conservatives are going to do is not only increase the fees, we're going to ring-fence mental health spending, we're going to increase training places for doctors and nurses, and I've personally, with the support of my party, passed an act doling out £1 billion for mental health spending, for mental health and wellness spending for veterans of our country's armed services, and armed forces, and I think that's a very critical part of this NHS. And I'd like just to quickly point out, the NHS is a fantastic system. We don't need to reform it, and we don't need to do massive, overwhelming reforms just to make it sound like we're doing something. Because to me, that's exactly what the Labour Party sound like they're doing. And unfortunately for the people of Britain who might be using the NHS, this would be a very bad thing indeed. A very bad thing. And we cannot have this. This is why you cannot vote Labour in this election. You should vote Conservative to ensure we get more doctors and nurses, ring-fence mental health spending, and the money that the NHS actually wants.
May I speak?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So the Liberal Democrat NHS policy. The NHS is a wonderful and lovely system that has been working for the UK for many, many years. While right now the Liberal Democrat goal is to increase our expenditure in order to provide for the service legislated by previous Conservative governments, and we will be paying for this with our negative income tax savings. We will be tackling mental health care through awareness, high-quality mental health training of staff, and also through better treatment of mental health patients. We will also ensure safe staffing levels. We want the NHS to be fully staffed so that we can provide for the people of the United Kingdom.
Can I just pick up on that? Is that all right? You said about mental health care. You're going to have it was something like high quality mental training health people with something or other. What's your actual policy? Because I just heard a load of words strung together there. But do you have any actual plans, or are you just saying you like mental health care?
We will be expanding upon the existing mental health service by producing a concrete plan to tackle mental health through awareness, high-quality delivery, and training for staff to recognize issues and manage them properly.
Do you know what the plan's going to involve?
Well, it ties in to increasing the NHS expenditure and to ensure safe staffing levels.
Quickly ask, is your manifesto pledge to make? It sounded like your manifesto pledge was to make a plan. Has the plan been made, or are you planning to make a plan?
I didn't say that we were going to make a plan. This is what we are going to do.
Because it sounded like you were going to make a plan. And people can't get cured of mental illness on a plan. You can't take away all the drugs and the doctors and get people better and well on a plan. It's not how it works. You have to have a plan in your manifesto. Well, and have a plan in your manifesto laid out like we have, ring-fencing mental health spending, putting it back to the people who know how to fix these issues, know the most, doctors and nurses, not necessarily politicians.
Okay, I'm just going. Can I just drop in here just quickly, because earlier on the Conservative Party representative made some pretty, I'd say, untrue comments. One was the fact that something about doctors. Well, between September 2010 and 2016, there's 9,000 more doctors, and as he said himself, is that it takes 8 years to train a doctor. So that must have been that 8 years ago when there was a Labour Party in, we trained doctors.
Yes, you trained doctors. You trained doctors at the rate that everybody else trains doctors. Congratulations.
Okay, great. The concern is not doctors coming in now. It's in a few years' time when a lack of investment in training for doctors come in. That's where the concern is. Now, you went back to the £8 billion figure. Well, the £8 billion figure is from 2015. If we're using statistics from 2015, they're so unbelievably out of date. Get with the times. The NHS is in a serious crisis. I'm just going to... something that the... Chris Hobson of NHS Providers said the settlement needs to be redrawn and seriously redrawn. You know, 8 billion is simply not enough for the NHS. We need 20 billion because we're not talking about keeping up with the standard of care, because that's what the 8 billion was for. We're about improving it. This is about reducing,
about throwing money,
not just about
with,
meeting targets.
No real plan.
Bettering targets.
You're just throwing money at it. How did it come out to a nice round figure like £20 billion?
How do you get more doctors? How do you get more nurses? How do you get more facilities? How do you get more equipment?
Yeah, you need £8 billion.
I thought you guys would understand that. Obviously, you don't.
That's
£8 billion figure is from 2000. No, it's from 2015. No, it's not. No, it's not. Because in 2015 it was sent, and Chris Hobson, the year later, who was the person who provided that figure, said the settlement needs to be redrawn. Get with the times.
May I come in now, please? Wonderful. Now, Mikey, MCR, a while ago, you brought up a policy where you said, private healthcare provision isn't going to work. We've had PFI. PFI is not private healthcare provision. It's an elaborate system to hide the national debt. Now, private implementation of healthcare within the NHS has failed spectacularly under governments of all colours. And the reason is very simple. You can't integrate a private healthcare provider into a public system. It's impossible. It would be like trying to give someone with a different blood type a blood transfusion. So, this is how we're going to do it. we're going to allow for the existence of parallel healthcare options. That means in addition to the NHS, which will cover everyone and we will keep protected, we will say to people, if you would like to have a private healthcare coverage, then we will pay for part of that. We will subsidise up to 70% of it, or 65% of the cost of premium, whichever is higher. Lower, I apologise. Now, what that means is that we will then be able to reduce the load on our NHS, which means the money we're already spending on it will go further, because there'll be less people to treat within the NHS. So actually, we don't need to spend any more money on the NHS itself at all. What we actually need to do is just reduce the demand on it, and we can do that by expanding private healthcare provision, and it won't go wrong like PFI, because PFI was an elaborate system to hide national debt. This is a real healthcare alternative.
Just briefly in response to that, I don't think the NUP leader was actually going after club policy there. He was just making his own point about PFI failures. He wasn't trying to go after club policy.
Yeah, he was, but I'd like to...
Yeah, I'm just saying he wasn't going... Well, I don't believe he was going after
private health, parallel private healthcare as
I don't know, but I was just trying to make the point.
Proposed by the classical liberals.
It is quite possible to have a functional and fully parallel system,
and it's a
that
good
doesn't
idea.
interfere
We voted
with the
for that
NHS
legislation.
and helps to reduce the burden on it.
Well, this is the final question of the evening. It's not going to require much debate. It's basically, what will a government involving your party set out to achieve whilst in government? And it's going to go to toasted Russian first.
Well, I'm not... It seems like if you'd like me to read the manifesto, I'm more than happy to do that. We're going to, but if not, if you want me to condense it a little bit, we're going to solve the problems that we're going to have through Brexit. We're going to solve those issues through our Brexit plan that we've laid out in speeches. We're going to ensure we have stable leadership in the form of the Prime Minister. We're going to ensure that we have a budget surplus. We're going to make sure that our infrastructure works properly. We're going to make sure that crime goes down. Business confidence goes up. People are happier. People are in better jobs. People are earning better wages. And we're going to do that through the Conservative plan. And if people want to live better lives, people want to make sure their children and their children's children live in a better country with a better future, they should vote for the Conservatives this election. That's what we're going to lay down the plan, and we're going to do it. Thank you very much.
And then now to the Labour Party Deputy Leader, Elliot C99.
Labour is developing and talking to people about a message of hope for a new direction in our country. We're not going to be subsidising private healthcare providers. We're going to be funding our own NHS to provide universally free healthcare. We're going to be investing in our economy, unlocking £500 billion of investment over the next 5 years. We're going to be taking back control of our economy. We're going to be reintroducing employee representative councils, minder funds. We're going to be mutualising passenger transport boards. This is about giving power to the people and developing a shared ownership of our economy. This is about reducing inequality. This is about improving people's standards of living. The other parties, especially on the right, are not working for you. They're working for a few. They're working for their big party donors. They're working so they get a tax cut for millionaires. What the Labour Party is working for is a better future for Britain, a new direction, one where we can live peacefully together and we can increase our standards of living and ensure prosperity for all. This is about creating equality of opportunity and a better country. Vote Labour for a new direction.
And the NUP Leader, MCR 3257.
So we've got to be realistic about our party's place in the politics of the United Kingdom. We're not going to claim that we're going to form a majority government after this election, or even become the largest party. But we can clearly see the NUP working in government for the benefit of the British people. This is a great government, and we've made some great progress. And a lot of credit for that is with the Conservatives and our partnership. But the truth is, having no checks on the Conservative government, or having the Conservative government rely on the classical Liberal Party, is not beneficial. And what you need as the British people is the NUP voice in government, standing up for public services, standing up for working people, and pushing for a balance between business and workers. And that's just on the economy and public services. We've also got a plan for restoring Britain to, the country that we once were. The left's carefully crafted a plan to take away everything that makes Britain British in order to make some sort of revolution and overthrowing Britain as an idea, the United Kingdom, much easier. And that's come in the form of many attempts to abolish the monarchy, successful attempts to secularize the UK, and various other things, more and more attempts to reform the House of Lords. We're going to stop that, and we're going to be the only party that you can rely on to stop that and reverse that, to make Britain the country that it ought to be, and that we can gain an identity from. And that's our plan.
And now to the Liberal Democrat representative, Guerrilla Empire Zero.
Thank you. The Liberal Democrats, what we stand for and what we will bring you is a equal, liberal, and stable future for the United Kingdom. We will ensure that we will be funding our NHS and to ensure that we will get the best Brexit deal possible, which preferably is no Brexit at all. Now, a lot of these people are claiming that they can be the ultimate be-all, end-all for the United Kingdom, but some of these simply aren't true. The NUP is supporting regressive policies that do not support the current ideas of British voters today, especially among young people, which are the future of this country. I've seen time in and time out that people have promised that they're going to bring these great reforms, great subsidies to whatever company they think they see fit. But I've not seen any sort of progress being made, and the Liberal Democrats is the only way to see any real progress be made in the United Kingdom. Thank you.
And now to the Green Deputy Principal Speaker, Zukov236.
All right, thank you. The Green Party is, at its core, a party of democracy. We are a party of rights, we are a party of liberties, and we are a party that supports the common good. We are a party that will protect our NHS system. We are a party that will protect and progress workers' rights. We are a party that will fight against pollution and support measures that fight climate change. And we are a party that will support ordinary Britons across this country. Thank you.
And now, lastly, but certainly not least, the Classical Liberal Deputy Leader, Twisted News.
Yesterday I was in my constituency, Northumbria, which is where I live, and I was talking to some of my prospective constituents. And one of them asked me, why did I leave the Labour Party? And I thought about it. And then I decided that the reason I left was because I felt that there wasn't a party that could genuinely push liberty in our country. The Conservatives, who will hop into bed with the far right the first chance they get. The Liberal Democrats, who can't even get their own policies to be consistent. The Labour Party, who want a state big enough to take everything you have. And the Greens, who can't even keep their seats voting for long enough to break apart our country. And the Classical Liberals, finally, are an actual alternative. We are going to slash income tax massively. An average of 12.5% for everyone. We're going to bring back NIT, and we're going to make it work for everyone. We're going to sort out our justice system. We're going to relax immigration, and we are going to make sure your kids can get into good schools. That is the alternative we provide. That is the alternative against the stale establishment that has no ideas. All they can do is bicker. That is why you need to vote for the Classical Liberals.
And with that, this year's debate has come to a close. I'd like to thank all the party representatives for coming and having their say on Britain's future. And thank you for listening.